which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a rather extensive agenda tonight, so I do want to move things along. We do have a sheet here for public comments, if anybody would like to sign that. If you're here to speak for the public hearing, you do not have to sign in. You just have to come forward and give your name and address, okay? But if you have a public comment, come right here. Okay? All right, so first on our agenda, I guess, Mr. Restivo, you have a public comment.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, I don't want to be better. But I've noticed a few times now, after recycling days, that there's a bunch of trash up and down my road. I'm sure it's not the only one happening. But I think the recycling trucks are spilling trash all over the roads. And I know last Earth Day, I saw people around the corner from me filling up their car with trash bags of stuff that they're picking up from the side.
I've seen that too.
I was seeing the DPW contact them.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, we have the minutes from August 9th.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of August 9, 2018 as presented.
Second.
I have one question, and I just need clarification myself. On page 3, for the appointment to the zoning board, was the gentleman appointed as an alternate or as a zoning board member? Alternate. An alternate, so should that be noted? Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to payroll warrant number 6.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 6 in the amount of $33,690.50.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Payroll warrant number 7.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 7 in the amount of $33,829.63.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to payroll warrant number 8.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 8 in the amount of $32,919.53.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Moving on to payroll warrant number 9.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 9 in the amount of $36,778.92.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to payroll warrant number 10.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 10 in the amount of $33,930.04.
Second.
Would you read the amount again, Mr. Roberts?
$33,930.04.
Thank you. And
Second.
second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to fiscal year 2018 general warrant number 17.
Make a motion to accept fiscal year 2018 general warrant number 27 in the amount of $15,878.74.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Moving on to general warrant number 3.
Make a motion to accept general warrant number 3 in the amount of $279,205.81.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to general warrant 3A.
Make a motion, we pay general warrant 3A in the amount of $406.67.
Do I have a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Moving on to general warrant number 3B.
Make a motion to accept general warrant number 3B in the amount of $120.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one recusal. Thank you. Moving on to old business. Rights Auto. Good to see you here tonight. Thank you.
I apologize.
That's okay.
That's probably because of me, and I almost did didn't make it here today because of another emergency. So, my name's Kevin Salvaggio. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Ritchie and Bryce. We've got a progress report that's prepared for you. I'm not quite sure what stage you're at. I have spoke to Ms. Achille about it briefly. But we have done some of the things that I saw were on the agenda for him to do for you guys to start to clean this place up. So, if I may, he's done, and I haven't received if anybody would like them, by the way. So, he's moved 400 cars in one, that was the last, so that, this would have been through July 13th to August 9th, and the receipts are all there, I believe, like the peruse them or anything. And then we moved another 200 cars since August 10th to today. So I think that when my brother, Mr. Leprezero, was here with you, he agreed to be able to move somewhere between 4 and 5 cars a month out of there. That's just not honestly feasible. It's probably the maximum that he can do is 200 cars a month. Obviously, I don't know how to crush cars. I apologize, but he did purchase a new crane.
So we're gonna new loaders with
A
this.
new machine, so we can start with more cars. But I don't want to mislead anybody. The 400 cars that was told to you in the beginning, it's just almost impossible for him to meet that. I don't want to set a goal for him. He's going to come back here, and if you guys allow him to continue, he's going to come back and fail.
May I ask you something? Did you say that he did move 400 cars between July 13th and August 9th?
Can I?
Sure.
Actually, I moved, because I came to the hearing last time, even though I didn't concentrate, so that I wanted to think I could phone because I didn't know the cars. I did 393 cars that day, and the next was a Friday, they picked up another 9, so I was short.
So in one day you moved 393?
I moved 393 cars. Last time we spoke, the council said I had to do a 400 number. I was short 7 cars, but they came, the truck couldn't come for another load, they said it came the following Friday and picked up 9 more. So then I have 193 cars I did after that Friday to the 13th, which is
So we're almost at the 600 number. So it's more feasible that he can.
very hard to do 400 cars. It's almost impossible. It was almost impossible.
Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna think one by one. I remember that meeting, it wasn't something we had asked you what was a reasonable number.
Yes,
That was the number we
yes.
come up with. It wasn't something
No,
we arbitrarily
yes.
picked out of the sky. We had discussed with you what you think would be feasible that you could actually hit and do that in a reasonable amount. So what you're doing is you're coming back and saying you would have shot it a little bit.
Absolutely.
I didn't realize how hard it was. I thought it would be easy, but it's a day non-stop in the machine with the guys I have. We couldn't do anything else. There's no other income coming in, but doing cars was just very hard.
All the converters out.
Yes, catalytic converter, gas tanks, wiring harness, like a little something. Take the wiring harness to cash in. Now, the problem now is scraps. It's not your problem, but scrap was about 190 a ton. Now it's gonna be less than $100.
And that's why I brought that up, because I do scrap steel every now and then, and I know sometimes things slow down on scrappers when the price drops and they wait till it goes back up. So I don't want this to be something like, oh, I can't make 400 cars, and it really relates to the scrap price being dropped 30 or 50.
It's absolutely
No, not at all. No, that's not it, because it's still continuing. And then we had one of the neighbors, I'm assuming it's one of the neighbors made it.
We can get
Okay, but I have a DN, I have to clean up some bolts, so that's gonna take some time also, so I kind of spread it and trying.
So I've talked to Mr. Ritchie over the last month and a half and so, and definitely it's not a stall tactic or I mean economically, if you do the business, you know he's gonna lose money because of what he paid, but he's not doing it to that, for that purpose. It's not to save money, it's just, again, if it was his recommendation or Mr. Lepizaro's recommendation of 400 cars, you're right, they overshot what they could do, it's just impossible.
Ms. Lawrence, you have?
It's come to my attention and it's in the rumor mill, and that's why I'm coming directly to you and not
parts, but
Correct.
I have no other means of income.
I thought we had that discussion at the last meeting,
I-
saying that that would not be happening.
Well,
So we,
I must have misunderstood.
I wasn't here and I apologize and I'm happy you brought that up because I wasn't even aware that that was one of the stipulations of the last meeting. However, knowing his finances and, his family and how many children he has, he doesn't have any other income. This is his only source of income. He's not able to go out and get a job. This has really been his only source of income for a lot of years.
But you're getting $160 a ton for every car that goes out and scraps.
Yeah, that pays for the machine, yes, pay for the
Yeah, they
loader.
bought a new machine.
Yes.
I'm not saying that,
Oh,
I don't know what he made in the past, to be honest with you. All I'm saying is going forward, because the scrap numbers are coming down so far, obviously, part of that would be income to continue to be able to clean the place up. We had DEM come in, to be totally candid with you, DEM came in a couple of weeks ago.
I brought the notice to the town hall as soon as they came that same day. It should be, I gave it to Red Bishop.
Okay.
I mean, I put a fence up, trying to cooperate with the neighbors, and now they're saying the fence is on wetlands. So I
It's
think
not,
this,
please, it's on what?
they said it's on wetlands, some of it.
We're gonna just move it to make it easy with that.
They're gonna come back, they had to bring a supervisor, and they inspected the yard, everything was fine, but the bolts, they take on more, so it's kind of brings in mosquitoes and stuff like that, so I agreed with them that I would jump the bolts, I got like 7 bolts. They were gonna be jumped anyway with the cars, but I didn't wanna do them before the cars, so I'm gonna have to mix them in. But the fence, there's a question on the fence side. But I just would like the neighbors to come to the council, like if the other neighbor complained, instead of making anonymous phone calls, that would be more fair, but I guess not.
I don't really discuss fairness.
No.
I'd like to just look way back to an average car scrap
Yes.
is not less than 2 tons. They're usually 3,000 to 4,000 pounds.
Some cars, the ones that I did more of, the 400, had no motors and transmissions. So that's why it's less time. But if I had
More than
more,
a ton, like,
it probably, the average cars were doing about like a 160 to 140 to 160, yes.
and like a pickup truck's around.
Pickup trucks, then you really want,
5,000. So, 600 cars at 160.
should be what, 80.
That's $96,000
Yes. Yes.
in scrap.
It's made $50,000 for a
And I'm just trying to say, I
No,
don't want to believe the argument that he needs to make a living, but I don't want to ignore the point that he's making a pretty decent living on the scrap steel that's going on.
Right, no, I understand that,
That was
but we
why-
did have, I got you, so we did have expenses, and that's why he bought the new machine was so that he could try to expedite this stuff. So the machine, from what I understand, was somewhere around $50,000. And then he's also got payroll.
Yes, and I also spent $4,000 on the machine in the last month and a half in repairs. I had the slips. It just, and now I just blew an alternate. I did it myself. I can't afford someone to come and do it.
So I guess basically what we're
It's just
asking,
unfortunate it happens.
without telling you about our financial issues and
No, and,
begging and so forth, is we're just asking to, we'd be happy to come back and forth to a monthly meeting, give you progress reports, if we're allowed to do that. The front has been cleaned up. We're trying to work with you as much as we possibly can. It's just the feasibility of staying open in the meantime to do that.
Well, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, he does not have a license. Am I
So-
correct?
the license is held because of the,
So I don't understand
Stipulation.
how you could be confused about being able to sell something. To sell something, you need a license, am I correct?
yes, last time,
Okay, thank you.
okay, the last time when Mark came, he said we're not allowed to sell pots. That was the last time that, not last, he's been there numerous times, but when he came in and I was on vacation, he said that we couldn't sell pots. But Red Bishop never said we could anything about selling pots. So after that, I assumed when I came back to the meeting, I was able to sell pots after Mark came there. So, but the thing is, if we're gonna do that, which is all the clientele we built up over the years, we're gonna lose it. So the business is gonna be diminished. I spent years of hard work to get clientele in, and as a business owner, if you stop telling your customers you can't sell them any parts, which you're right, they don't have a license, you're right, but your customers are gonna go somewhere else. I had to rent a yard, I rent a yard in Cumberland, which is a friend, it's not really much money, but that's why she was saying that maybe you might see cars coming, cars come in, I put them on a flatbed and bring them to a Cumberland yard. Because some vehicles I get for free, and some I can get for next to nothing, so I have to have some, reserves, especially when I sell a motor, I guarantee for 90 days. I had a Sonata, perfect example, went bad on a customer, the motor was $900. I bought a car for $200 to give that customer that motor. So instead of me spending $9, I spent $2, and I have a car that I can crush with. But that's in the Cumberland place, my friend salvage yard. So that's why you might have maybe they're saying their cars aren't coming in. There's 2 cars across the street that come out with a truck. It's one of my customers. They dropped it off. There was a problem with a brake line. They're gonna pick it up. I get it. I told them I can't have any cars here. So that maybe that's
There's more
why.
than one truck there, I drove by there. Nice meeting.
Yeah, the gray truck, but the blue and white truck is sold. That was in the back. I had to clear out. That was part of the big trucks from Newell's. Yes, that is sold. The customers.
Wasn't there something about the windows having to be boarded?
That's been completed.
That's all, that's all.
The fence is up.
Across the street, so
Across the street.
whatever.
The street's cleaned up.
I drove by yesterday.
The big box truck, you see it blue and white. Outside in
There's
Missouri.
more than,
Hmm.
there's more than 1 or 2 vehicles.
Yeah.
Those vehicles also belong to the.
They belong to the-
They don't belong to the stuff.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Rich, they don't belong to him. He cleaned out, I will attest this, he cleaned out the vehicles that belong to him. Those other vehicles that are there, they've been there, they belong to the gentleman that owns that property.
Right, because I just drove by tonight.
Yes,
and there
they belong to the, they don't belong to him.
It knows. And I also had DBR that's been up there. They got a complaint from one of the neighbors that the cars across the street are not, that don't belong there. So I'll work with them, and they actually came at the same time Mark was there. He communicated with them.
Department of Business
Yes,
Relations.
yes. So it's a tough situation. I wish I wasn't in it, but the business, if things sell parts, we're gonna be out of business. Put it that way.
If I may make a suggestion, and obviously you'd have to confer with Ms. Achilles, but, so the license was not renewed, because number one, it was over the column. Okay. And he didn't show up to the meeting, or no one showed up.
That was,
There was
I
some
apologize.
confusion.
Okay.
There's a lot of confusion.
Okay. So I'm not that confused yet, but I'm getting there. But if I could make a request of the council that some type of a limited temporary license be granted to him on a month-to-month basis until he does what's going to be done to be in compliance with the ordinance of the town. With certain stipulations that, Ms. Achilles and I could probably work out, because she knows what you guys want and I don't. And if he screws it up, then shame on him, quite frankly.
I mean, with the gentleman Mark, I would definitely not do anything wrong with that guy like him on your team. Definitely not. He's a well-paid guy.
So I guess,
Piss him off anyway.
okay, so why am I here? I
It's like a cowboy.
don't know. So, if I could request something like that, and maybe we could work towards that, that would be great. With whatever stipulations you guys may find fit, it would allow him to make some income. I don't
So
know
this
about.
limited license would be to sell parts, not to take any.
No.
No costs,
Not
No cars.
nothing.
Do you know what number you're supposed to get down to?
I do.
You do?
I'm not that
I just
confused.
wanted to find out. if
I do, and honestly, so I'm actually researching that because I guess Mr. Gallo was your attorney back then.
Mr. Who?
Gallo?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put- that was our attorney back then. I'm sorry.
Well, either way, so he's a judge now, so I don't have much to judge anything from it. But I did see the stipulation from the minutes. Oh my God, no, I.
You can't make this up.
No, you can't.
Could,
Go ahead.
now you're
So-
almost up, because we have someone who'd like to speak.
So the council can't grant a license without a duly noticed public hearing?
Right, right, so we would not be doing that tonight. So I just want to make sure we know what he's asking for. Thank you, Mr. Steve.
Thank you. So it would be a limited license, taking in no new junk cars, and just be selling parts out of there, continue what he's doing. We're gonna have to comply with DEM, we've already had them up there. There's a few things that we have to do to clear them up.
How's it going with the fire marshal?
Oh, good, I'm glad you brought that up. They granted me 60 days, 6 months, I'm sorry, 6 months. I have the letter there, which was a big help.
When does that end? When's your 6 month?
I went to the hearing. Let me find it. My hearing date, and then I would assume it'd be right after the hearing. I went to the hearing on 8/28 at 1 p.m.
August 28th, so it would be retroactive to that.
You're saying that you would, instead of your 400 count a month, you want to roll it back to
I'd
200?
like to go too, but I could do more. I'd rather, I mean, I didn't.
So if you roll back, hypothetically, if you roll back to 2, to get to the magic number,
And then also,
we're 7 months out to get to the magic number, which is pretty close to your
the fire,
hearing.
yes.
That's
So,
all I can
please,
play at the same
like,
time.
yes.
Everything would be simultaneously, so it either works or it doesn't, quite frankly.
I'm jumping cars and making the roads bigger at the same time. I'm not just jumping cars.
So that,
It's,
I spoke with one of the neighbors, and she was very happy.
yeah, the first neighbors that came, oh, I gotta stop, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
But she was happy with what you were doing.
Please don't leave.
What I was gonna say, the first hearing that we had, when the neighbors had come up with the fire and the cleanup, they were 100% right. And I'm glad it did happen, because it was a disaster. I mean, it really was. We were in the street. So it has come, and it's just taken longer than what I expected.
That's really our spiel. Sorry.
That's okay.
So if you guys could take that under advisement, I'd greatly appreciate it. And that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
What's the magic number?
So yeah, I know that.
It's not very sure.
Yeah. this is
When I'm
actually,
ready.
Anything else?
What is the pleasure of the council?
Oh, you have a,
That's okay, click it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Mrs. Ryder. Yes.
The numbers, I know prior to July 12th, they had removed 346 cars. How many since then?
600.
More.
At 600 more, yes, no?
Yes.
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 That's 400 and then
Approximately.
100, another 193, so.
Yes, it was 226 and then 120, so it was over, it was
346.
346,
Oh,
yes.
346 at 400 and then.
No, before the
193.
Before,
No, before the font, no, I want to get that correct.
and
Before the font.
600 since then,
Yes.
so you're almost at 1,000.
And is that what you wanted, Mrs. Ryder?
That's, I was
Oh,
just,
okay.
I got lost on
I didn't know whether you had more.
No, I just
Okay.
got lost on the
Thank
numbers.
you.
So,
Then my math is wrong because I just took,
Still, I'm not
It's
saying
still-
it's fine,
Yeah,
much,
it's
but,
enough. It's close enough. Ms. Horace?
in order to be able to give him a partial license, we have to have a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so how
And we'd have to,
Next
if
meeting.
that's what you wanted to do, we could make a motion to do that so that Mrs.
Well, I don't want to drive somebody out of business, and if he's compliant and the neighbors are beginning to be happy, then I will make a motion to entertain that, and then have the people come in and speak. Do you have to have a public hearing to give a license, am I correct?
Yes.
This,
If you could add to that motion to have them sit down with the solicitor
Yes.
and formulate a plan, so when we have a public hearing, we can address it and move forward with it.
With the license, yeah. It's just that it has to be advertised.
Yes, okay.
And would you have to advertise it as a minimal license or a limited license or?
I would say.
You would have, whatever we determine, whether it's a provisional or if we,
it's
so,
not gonna be limited.
but it, the thing is, like, it's a grandfather,
Not limited to the
Right.
license.
we'll advertise it, I just have to look into exactly how we're going to treat it. Because he did have some grandfather rights, and I mean, right now his renewal was supposed to be almost pending, so however whatever we determine it's going to be, that is how we'll be advertising it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good, that's the motion. The motion is for the attorneys to sit down together and work out some kind of an agreement, and come back and have a public hearing on the agreement.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Council.
We have
Wait,
to
no,
Oh,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Mr. Ritchie, please don't disappoint.
Thank you very much.
He will not disappoint because I'm here because of his dad, and his dad will be more. Thank you very much. Thank you myself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, moving on, the Henry Phillips Recreation Field bid update. The last time we discussed this, we talked about the fact that the trust was recommending that we have a fence placed around it. We did put out a bid. Mr. Ward is here. Mr. Ward, do you want to tell us about how things went with the bid for the fencing?
We didn't receive any bids for the fencing. I did talk today to a person that installs fencing that lives in Foster, and he was so busy, he missed the deadline, and so he thought it was out. But he verbally told me that a top quality chain link fence to meet the specifications would be $60,000.
You don't need it.
You can go with a lesser quality for like low 50s. And then he said you could probably do a net type system for 30,000 under. Would just be, holes with just a netting, raise and lower, or keep up or whatever. And he's gonna formalize that and give it to me in writing this week, but that's where we stood. He didn't get any other bids in on the fence. We bid or try to reach out to some other companies, but that's where we stand.
Mrs. Dillon did give us the bids from the last time that we met. They do not include the fencing, am I correct?
They don't include the fencing that the trust wants. It does include the regular fencing behind the backstop, around the property.
Right.
It just doesn't include the extra fencing that's used. And you might be able to get rid of some of that outfield fencing and replace it with the fencing that the insurance company wants. So you could save some money there, but I think it would be a large amount of money. But instead of having a 4-foot fence followed by a 25-foot fence, you just get rid of
Get rid
the
of
4-foot
4-foot
fence.
fence and have
fence.
update, would we be able to look at these bids that we have here and make a motion to accept one of those, or do we have to wait?
Well, it says update and action, so, yeah.
Okay. So the way it is here?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Sabata.
I'm gonna tell you again, the baseball field doesn't fit there. And I don't know how you're trying to squash this thing into a space that doesn't fit, so, the last time this conversation took place at a council meeting, I think 2 meetings ago, there was some, suggestion that you try and get to DEM and drop the baseball field component of this. Putting up a $60,000 fence for a baseball field that doesn't fit on the space. In fact, the only field that fits there is a girls' softball field, and there's no call for it. So,
I thought it was the other way around.
no, it's not the other way around. So I'm going to say this again. I looked at that space after it was bought. I thought it was a great idea buying it, but the baseball field doesn't fit. So if you end up with just a grass space and a track for soccer or whatever you want to do, and then do something with the second round of this proposal, but it's not worth spending that kind of money for a baseball field that doesn't fit on that space. So,
Thank you, Mr. Sabata.
yeah, people
I
are,
recall you saying that, thank you. And I do recall us,
I think I requested that Joanne look, Jennifer look into, talking to them about the.
I recall asking her, have we heard anything? I have not.
I haven't heard it.
could you ask the attorney? The attorney is your legal entity. That's who should be
Mr.
dealing
Sabata,
with.
thank you.
Yeah, okay.
What would be the pleasure of the council at this time? We did request that the planner contact DEM. I do not know if he has done that at this point.
Joanne?
The problem is, if we go ahead with this, the way it is, you're gonna have a half a field. You're gonna have a half a project. You gotta come up with the money to finish the other half. I think we're chasing our tail. Plain and simple.
Is it appropriate to ask Joanne or if Joanne or if she would contact DEM and see about?
Joanne, our solicitor, or Jennifer?
Joanne, our solicitor, seeing we haven't heard anything from.
I'll do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just, let me know.
Is that something that's doable that you would be able to do?
I can contact them. I was not at the meeting where you laid out what we needed, so if somebody can send me specifically that, yes, I have no problem doing that.
Okay. Thank you. So, yes, Heidi.
Isn't there a deadline for this bid award?
November 2019, yes.
It has to be awarded or finished. I thought it had to be completed by
It
then.
has to be completed,
So we have
yes,
maybe a year.
yes.
Okay. And how much money has been put into that ball field already? About 300,000?
That's one of the.
And the
other
grant,
issues.
is the grant for 400,000 or am I reversed? It's about that, right?
Grant is great.
So this is land that we got on a grant that is specifically for recreation, can never be used for anything else. We cannot sell it. The only thing we can do is follow through and make it into some kind of a ball field. Otherwise, we've just wasted money. It's gonna sit there and turn back into forest. Not my opinion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So Ms. Forrest, you make a motion? Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask our solicitor to look into contacting DEM and seeing if we can change the proposal to fit the area, so because the baseball field supposedly doesn't fit. Well, yeah, we need to find out, we need some answers. We have some that say yes, some that say no, I have no idea. And we need some definitive answers, please. And if we can extend the grant, yes.
So we had a motion, it's been seconded, any further discussion? Yes.
Back when this was first brought, when we bought the property, there was a engineering company firm that planned this whole thing, was brought to the planning board before my time. And there was detailed plans for the fields, the concessions, the parking lots, everything. So I don't understand how the field doesn't fit. If the engineer had laid it out for a Little League field and a soccer field, basketball courts, tennis courts, numerous things, unless those plans have changed since then, but we did pay an engineer.
We do have those plans.
So maybe we should refer back to them to see what is feasible and if those plans are correct, or if they did update where things with restrictions on the property that we can't, that plan doesn't fit on the property any longer, or why it isn't feasible at this time.
One other point, Denise, she said, I just asked the solicitor, as long as we're not discussing awarding the
Yeah,
bids, I
thank you.
think I should have valuable
I
discussion
agree.
on this.
Go right ahead.
So, back a little bit of history, this, first question, was the motion to go to DEM?
Was for her to go back to who awarded the
We
grant.
wanted the grant to see,
All right, so back a little bit of history, when we had the settlement, we literally did go back to the grant writers, I don't know if you forgot, but we asked them to put off the ball field and go to the soccer field and move that as the additional one, and they said absolutely not.
we'd have to write a grant
You'd
again.
have to rewrite another grant to do that, and start from scratch, and take the opportunity of losing the existing grant. So we've already gone that route, and to ask them the same question, Joe Carey is correct, I remember going to all the public hearings. That is a Little League field, it's for, just identical to the one we have at Woody Loudon. You won't get kids of 12 in Little League playing on it because the size is smaller, but it is sized for a regulation ball field to keep balling down. There has been close to $300,000 spent on this between purchasing it, engineering it, paying $200,000 to clear it, stump it, and grade it to sub-level. We got awarded a $400,000 grant to move forward. I think it's almost like we're afraid to make a decision. I'm kind of getting frustrated that this is dragged on and on. The settlement has been done for a very long time. It has not settled anymore. And it went out, the RFP went out several months ago. So we either going to decide if we're really going to do something or we're just going to say no and own up to it. And my opinion is it's $400,000 spent. It's not been, and the other point I want to make, the $400,000 was, there's a fee that's done by charter when people subdivide large pieces of property. They were smart enough to understand that by subdividing a large piece of property would create standard smaller lots that meant the 4 acres, which would increase the demand on schools and bring children to the town as we increase the house lots. So there was a fee approved by charter to levy a fee on that subdivision to go into a recreation fund. It could only be used for new ball fields and recreation fields. So that's where this money was then coming from on the $300,000 of expenditure. So I would implore the council to move forward or get off the pot and just say we're not going to do it. And I'm for. I don't believe the property was correctly purchased, but at some point you got to make lemonade out of it. You got to make lemonade out of it. So that's just my little bit of history on it. The ball field is phase 1. The grant was awarded for phase 1, which was the parking lot, the water retention, the detention pond, drainage, and the ball field, and the fencing, and the gate, and the walking path.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
If I remember, on the original plans, that was a smaller ball field because it was a Little League ball field. It was smaller than a standard size ball field, if I remember correctly.
No, it's identical to, there's certain, I think, when you get above 12 and over, where you have new leagues for kids, there's a longer distance from home plate to ball, and first to second and so on. This one is designed for 12 and under,
That's what it was.
and it's identical to the one we have at Liberty Love. That one also, we can't have other towns, we share Situates when we get above 12. So this field is gonna be basically the same thing, but again, it was the wrong piece of property for it. The taxpayers approved to buy it, approved to have this expenditure done, move forward, so their decision has been made.
Right, so we're basically bound by their decision of that.
You cannot sell that property for anything other, and we're already in $300,000 on using that fee in lieu of subdivisions. So to unravel that would be a absolute nightmare at this point. So I would just say, move forward, and I've got other ideas down the line that I had for years that we could move along with the town in another direction that I would talk to anybody about in the future. I won't be sitting here after December, but my thoughts and passion for the town is still gonna be there. So to unravel what we got into, I think it's impossible. It's like rise to the top and get it done and do what we can.
Mrs. Wright?
I take exception to Mr. Rogers saying the land was purchased incorrectly. I was on that council. All of the laws and requirements by charter, by everything else were followed. Plans were done by an engineer. They met DEM specifications. The land has not shrunk. I do not understand why this has not gone forward. I mean, if you're concerned, have requirements for Little League fields changed within that amount of time? I don't think so. So it's either, do it or don't do it and lose the money. But you can't have it both ways. And it was done correctly.
Thank you.
I just want to add on, I do agree with Ms. Ryder that, and I mentioned that, and I say do it, but when I mentioned the piece of property, I would have liked the town to buy a piece of property that we could have used and put a ball field in that would have been suitable for children 12 and up, which is a large part of the town that we share with Situate. So when I said, I don't think.
You weren't thinking.
I wasn't saying it was wrong, it was
It was
just,
just not.
it was a rectangular piece of property that was limited to what it could be used for, so I think she misunderstood what I was saying, but I do agree with her, we should move forward.
Thank you.
I withdraw the motion.
I withdraw my second.
Okay, so we're back to.
I am really confused on this. I thought that we were going to proceed on this and not end up with an adequate ball field. Somehow I thought that everything got skewed and was wrong yeah. So I think we should go forward too.
It's the same plan that we've had from the beginning. Our concern at the last meeting was that the trust came forward and said, we need to have this fencing. So, you have before you a bid, thank you, Mr. Roberts. You have before you the 4 bids that were given to us. So, now that the motion has been withdrawn and the second has been withdrawn, what is the pleasure of the council now?
I make a motion that we go forward and we select a bidder this time. And I would recommend, obviously, the lowest bidder. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it into it or not.
So you
Award the lowest bidder for the job.
So we would need to say, and she would need to say the name of the builder
Okay, DeSilva Builders,
for the amount of.
$379,900.
Is there
Sorry.
a second? Any further discussion?
One comment, please.
Yes, Mrs. Roberts?
So right now you have 2 ball fields for 12 and under. You have less kids playing baseball, and you still need, if Situate ever lets you off their fields, you still need another recreation center. But you're correct to move forward. But
Thank you.
$60,000 for something nobody's going to use.
Thank you. we have any other discussion?
Yeah. Well, not discussion, comment. I was never big on this project from the beginning. Never believed that the piece of property was the correct piece of property for building, for putting together fields. There's not enough, I believe it's a 7 acre parcel. It's 5 to 7 acres. Large portion of the property is I believe it's a hill. So I strongly believe right from the get-go that this was the wrong piece of property to purchase for a rec field. But that being said, it was done, taxpayers approved it, and then the plan going on it, I have a problem with the building a duplicate field from what we already have. Because if you remember, Mr. Chippendale came in and gave us a lesson on usability and marketability for that particular field, which it's never going to be. So I had a problem with building a duplicate field, and I never understood that. Why build a duplicate field? Well, we can only build a duplicate field because we can't fit the field that would get used more on that lot.
I'm gonna have to ask people.
I'll move forward with it. I don't like the project.
I also have reservations about it, simply because of Mr. Chippendale's presentation. I know nothing about baseball, softball, t-ball. I have 3 daughters, they did not do those. This is, we have it, I think we need to move forward. It is something that I'm up at night thinking about November 9th, 2019. What are we gonna do? And I did promise Mr. Lewis that it would get done if the people voted for it. So, that being said, we have a motion, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Moving on, Quahog Solar Farm. Are they here? I don't see them here. Oh, you do.
They usually.
Thank you. Moving on.
So no testimony? I'm sorry.
They didn't give our presentation and they were just giving us a presentation. They still have to go before the planning board. So
Are you accepting comments from the public?
if you would like to, we can.
If I could
accept
bore
comments.
you, please, just to get
Yep,
this over
you can comment away. Would you
Because
just give
Mrs.
us
Dillon is about to give me an office or a desk at town hall.
Could you give us your name and address, please?
Yes. You don't have to take notes, I printed it out for you. Thank you. Amita, A-M-I-T-A, Rodman, 2642 Tucker Hollow Road, and 2 parcels that abut the proposal. You don't need parcel numbers, I own 6 parcels.
You got it.
Okay. First of all, I'm really glad that the town council is looking at this issue, because it's not about Quahog. It's about the entire proliferation of solar in our beautiful town. I believe that this particular issue is extremely important for the council to engage in because of the size. This is a 40-acre parcel, and the first of this size for this town. And it would be the first large utility installation done as a commercial venture. This isn't National Grid doing this. This is a commercial investment venture. And the first, as far as I know, of this size sited in an AG zone. Now, those of us who live along Route 101 will tell you this is not any old AG zone. This is quintessential Foster. Irrespective of the permissibility, which I fully understand under the zoning code, I think we have critical considerations affecting the town going forward. This is not
a one-year thing. This is multi-decade. We have no independent third-party review or assessment because our code hasn't kept pace with that need. We don't have a code provision that says that we can require a third-party assessment by which we can test a lot of things that will be said by the applicant and have been said by the applicant. So then that leads us to rely on DEM as our expert. And I must insert here that an applicant has gone ahead and filed for the preliminary plan and go planning inappropriately when DEM hasn't finished their review. So this calls into question, their process, and I understand they're investors and they would like to move forward. But it means that we collectively don't have the information we need. The DEM findings are extremely important to those of us who abut, and even if we're not technical abutters, anybody who abuts Dolly Cole Brook. By the applicant's own statement, a good portion of this runoff runs into Dolly Cole Brook. There are 4 residential properties I know of. I think there's actually 5, Mrs. Fontenot was correct, that actually have Dolly Cole Brook run through it. The town of Foster spends a fair amount of money maintaining Tucker Hollow Road. Dolly Cole Brook crosses it. We have washouts, culverts. I can just tell you that yesterday's 1-hour storm produced tremendous runoff. So, we have this unknown of when they clear cut 40 acres and then replant, a bunch of whatever they're going to plant, of an unknown of how much runoff is going to affect us and our homes. The risks to the town. The first is we're spending money on the maintenance of Tucker Hollow Road. The second is nobody's going to pay, except ourselves as taxpayers, for whatever damage results on our property if the Dolly Cole Brook continues to exceed, the 100-year floodplain is now a 10-year floodplain when I speak of DEM. So it's a more frequent occurrence. We've asked for a surety bond, and that surety bond is for the future decommissioning of this. To me, that's the least of our concerns. Why haven't we asked for a surety bond for at least the maintenance of Tucker Hollow Road, when every time Dolly Cole Brook will now overflow the additional culverts that went in 3-4 years ago? This is an expense that we all are going to bear. You're approving a project that from the residents' point of view is not just a utility, it's semi-commercial. And the current code with respect to solar simply classifies this as solar, but yet we're entering into a long-standing arrangement with an operator. And forgive me, but that operator is an investor. That investor is going to reap the necessary tax deductions that they need for their multiple LLCs. We don't know who they're going to then sell this to or provide the opportunity for the next party to be an operator. We, the town, have no provisions to enter into an agreement with the operator or to be notified when there's a change in who the operator is. So where do we stand 5 years from now or 10 years from now when we have a problem? It's not the same, it's not analogous to a simple property ownership that I have as a resident because of the extent of the installation and that it's being planted into an AG zone. Now that kind of feeds into a less economic point, or a point that I can't prove to you economically. You don't know, I don't know, how this large installation as proposed, and I want to correct the record, I never said to the ZBR that we are against this, we are against it as proposed, because it's proposed in a behemoth way. We don't know how this installation will affect our property values. They cited something from North Carolina. God bless them with the storm, but that is not relevant to what we are. I think we all know from Route, 116, 116 and 101, it's a 10-mile stretch to the Connecticut border with only 1 mile of very low-density commercial. It's a 10-mile stretch of beauty. And as you come down going west from Situate, you're going to see this big time. And our proposal, several of us have approached the applicant and asked them to scale it back. Our town planner has suggested that it be moved back over the ridge of the hill. We don't want to see it, and we don't want the cut down of trees that actually protect us from flooding. There might be ambiguity as to how we term rural, because there's not a definition in the code, but I propose to you, policy goes beyond code. It includes the comprehensive plan, which, by the way, is being updated. So we're kind of out of sync here, and you're being asked to approve something that sets a major precedent for the town. I believe, and I request that you really consider the moratorium that was proposed to the council. It was not at the meeting, May or June, and that it is a very important consideration. There are lots of questions to be answered before we allow a change of this magnitude in an aging zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to add to that, I'm going to speak to the fact that as a member of Cranston Fish and Game, which is on Tucker Hollow Road, we have
My neighbor.
Cranston Fish and Game. We spend an enormous amount of money each and every year maintaining the pond in Tucker Hollow and that stream. This year, we're in the process of dredging out the stream under supervision of DEM. Any clearing above that stream in any amount is going to cause a substantial amount of runoff and clog that stream. I think the town should consider an ordinance of some sort as soon as possible, or a moratorium to stop these. We're left ourselves open to all these companies coming into this town and taking up properties, which we take very little taxation for. On top of it, as you know, the state mandates what we can tax these people for their properties. And they're taking up valuable forest land. They're cutting down trees. They're not considering, even though DEM comes in there, DEM has approved them in Richmond. Richmond has had nothing but problems with the ones they built down in there with runoff. There's been flooding on people's properties, numerous complaints about these. I think the town should consider a moratorium, and something needs to be done.
Thank you. Mrs. Radis. I just want to say that our solar ordinance was done in reaction to a solar farm being proposed on Theodore Francis. We didn't have anything. It was get something on the books, so at least we have something on the books. It really hasn't been looked at since then, and that was a number of years ago. Now, when the question of moratorium, having a moratorium, until things could be studied further and see what other cities and towns are running into and what they are doing, it was proposed that no, it would be, having a presentation in front of the council would suffice. Well, it's been months, and because of one thing or another, the presentation hasn't happened, but the solar project is moving on. And I think that you really have to address the moratorium because things have changed, and we have to be on top of it. Thank you. Mr. Sabatier.
When these things come before the planning board, I usually say the opposite as I did with St. Croix Gravel Bank. I was one against X. Everybody's talking about stuff, and DEM hasn't dealt with it yet. I'm telling you, when DEM deals with this, most of the conversation you're having here, then you have something to talk about. The idea that you want moratoriums to stop a particular entity coming here because you don't like the amount of taxes you're gonna get, or it may affect their properties. DEM may make them build who knows how many retention ponds. There will be a public hearing. You will get to deal with stuff after DEM speaks. Now, Joe, how many times have we dealt with this? This one? Twice?
Yeah.
Twice. They went before zoning once. I didn't mean to do this, to keep this thing going on. They went before zoning once. They went before planning twice. And they haven't gone to DEM yet. That should tell you something, all right? As the last thing I'd like to say, there are two pieces of property in this town that are completely worthless. One is Dolly Cole Hill with the special rocks, that where we couldn't build a doctor's office. And the other one is this piece. Just the worst piece of land you've ever walked on. So, what I usually say to anybody who's trying to stop something, all the neighbors that don't like it, and all the people that put your money together and buy the land.
We'd love to.
Go ahead.
We cannot because there's an agreement. I'm sorry,
I just want to be clear, a moratorium is not to stop a specific project. It is so the town can get its ducks in a row, do investigation, get all the information they can so that going forward, they can make informed decisions, because these things are going to keep coming and coming and coming.
How can you make a informed decision without being here?
You will not speak to Mrs. Ryder.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
if I can just correct a few statements that were made. DEM has received the initial application. They will take 2 or 3 weeks more before they issue what they believe needs to be done. There is a storm water management plan ready to go to planning. It is beyond that point that I am speaking. It is the policy matter. That is why I'm requesting that there be a stay until the ducks can be lined up. I think there are many considerations here, and it's not about this applicant or this parcel. It's about the whole concept of something this large in an agricultural residential zone.
Thank you. Yes. Is it in our bailiwick to request a moratorium, or is that through the planning board? Is that something we do?
In the past, the planning board did come to us, the planner sent us a letter requesting a moratorium. At that meeting, it was determined that we would ask them to present to us, and we could suggest.
I'm going to make a motion, if I can. At this time, if you want to wait.
Is it on the-
Wait,
we
wait,
can
it's on the
put it
agenda.
on the agenda. If you'd like, I can put it on the
Please.
agenda.
Denise, can I?
I thought I saw somebody else stand up first.
Well,
Could I
actually,
see? Yes, Donna.
I do live on Tucker
Could
Hollow.
you just state your name? I
Donna
know.
Fontaine.
Thank you.
I do live on Tucker Hollow. I agree with Ron. DEM has to make some decision before this goes forward, although according to Rita, they have this material in their hand. I think part of the point of having a moratorium is just to kind of settle back a little bit, let's be proactive before a situation arises for a next possible applicant. If we can't stop this applicant, and it's not stopping him, it's nothing personal, it's 27 acres that is going to be cleared. That's a lot of acreage, and the runoffs and whatnot are going to create a financial burden on the town, and the whole North Carolina situation was almost insulting. Do not give us a random state, to compare our home value with, because that is going to be a personal damaging situation. I think this is time to set a precedent for what the town will accept and what they will not accept. Part of Forster, the integrity of Forster is going to be challenged. We have, like Ron said, this was a crappy piece of property. Well, why do you think they're attracted to it? Because they're getting it for a good price. And he is going to make a decent amount of money on it through Narragansett exchanges. So he's already not shown twice at meetings. So this is our neighbor that we're gonna have. He's not gonna be in it for the long haul. He's not gonna be here for 25 years. He's gonna turn around and probably sell the property. And again, there's nothing personal against him. They're very nice. But this is how it's going to play out. So everybody that's gonna come to you for a solar project, don't think they're gonna be in there for 25 years. And then all of a sudden, they're gonna take it apart and you know, they're not gonna be our neighbors for 25 years. I'm guessing, and it's just a personal guess, probably under 5 years. They're gonna get their money and probably sell it off. So it's not a real good faith show. This is 2 meetings in a row that they haven't showed. And I don't know, I feel like you have to start setting a precedent for other companies that are going to be coming forward, because there are parcels and we have a lot of land and there are parcels that are going to be attractive to companies such as this. As far as the Nike site, I believe that's what Lynn was saying, that's the perfect spot. You know, old fields like that, old, you know, landfills that are already cleared. Don't ruin land that's, you know, even though it's a lousy parcel, to us, it's maintaining our, you know, integrity of forestry. It's also maintaining our property values and it's maintaining our road systems. So,
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the moratorium. Jennifer actually went to a statewide planning meeting, and many of the communities in the state that were faced with solar arrays were very concerned, so she came back and she spoke with me, and I had, with the previous planner, suggested this when the Route 6 solar went in, that we should take another look at the ordinances and make sure, you know, because there's things that we didn't know before these facilities came into town when we wrote the ordinance. So the council was approached by Jennifer when she came in, and she sent a letter to do a moratorium. Now, the moratorium isn't a permanent solution, it's a temporary moratorium, obviously, you know, to rework the ordinance. Unfortunately, any of the applications that are in process are grandfathered, they still be able to go forward with a moratorium, so it wouldn't affect this. But we can put, you know, conditions on the approval to appease the neighbors. And of course, DEM hasn't made their decision yet. That's still going forward, so they still can't come back to the planning board until they have that. It's required by the checklist. So I think, you know, the moratorium is a good idea, and you might want to move forward as soon as possible, because there's rumors that there are other companies looking to put solar arrays in town already that have been looking, that haven't made their preliminary application yet, but if they do, they will also be grandfathered in before the, you know, the ordinance can be reworked.
This is a point of vote. I agree that moratorium discussion we should have, and we will have, but by discussing it tonight, we're going to be discussing the whole thing all over again when we have it on the agenda.
I agree, I think we've kind of
Yes.
swayed away from the presentation,
From
certainly.
Claude.
And I agree, this is the second time that they have not shown.
And the point is,
And
there
they
may
notify you that they were not
be people that want to have input on a moratorium that aren't here tonight because it's not on the agenda
Right.
for discussion.
So that being said, I'm going to move on to Dr. Bonds with the district presentation. Hi, Dr. Bonds, how are you?
So I'm not sure you have it in the packet, but I emailed on Saturday some documents. There were 2 pieces of backup. One was Article 9, which is the budget article that came out of the state, which made a number of changes to school construction, how reimbursement happens, and the investments that schools need to make. From that budget article, you'll see that they actually have a phase-in where they did a a study across the entire state of all school facilities, and we found them to be in pretty much a state of disrepair. So the state, to avoid schools going back into that rate of disrepair, because they're putting forward several bonds, I'll speak to that in 1 second, they passed a budget article that would require school departments to maintain their facilities. And to that, they phased that in, so starting next year, school departments will have to dedicate 2% of their operational budget towards maintenance capital. The following year, 2.5%, and the year after that, 3%. And that's done in anticipation of these bonds passing, that going forward to the state. But again, the biggest thing was they know that in most communities, salaries, benefits, and other items, use electricity, take up the major part of a budget, and what always gets cut out is the capital projects to invest and improve a facility. So the schools have fallen into disrepair. Specific to the request before you this evening, in November, there will be a $250 million bond going before the voters in the state. I personally believe, with all the conversations I've had, that these bonds will pass, and as most bonds in our state do. So history, history being a predictor of the future. So what we wanted to do with that is I'm pretty confident that those bonds will pass. They're planning to do another $250 million the following year, but those funds are a fraction of what is needed for repairs throughout our state. So what we did is we contacted RIDE and said, we currently have a 5-year plan submitted to you for improvements to our schools. Can we set forward another 5-year plan now, even though the first one hasn't expired? And the reason for that was, I believe that with all the facilities that need to be repaired around the state, if we wait 2 more years till our 5-year plan has expired, there won't be much money left. So in order to ensure that some of the money that people in these communities send out to the state actually comes back to these communities, we're putting forward a proposal now, with your approval, to put another 5-year capital plan forward, so that the first 2 years of that plan would overlap with the last 2 years of the current plan that we're in. The other thing we did, if you looked at the spreadsheet that I provided you, the first 2 years in that spreadsheet do not have a large dollar amount attached to them, because we knew we'd be still funding the old plan. So we built the larger expenses into the last 3 years. We've been at, once that first plan expired, then we had a little more room within our budget to do that. The other thing I think is important for you to know is that we projected what our 3% would be based on our current budget, and we put forward a dollar amount that would be underneath that 3%. Recognizing by state law, we're going to have to fund our schools at a 3% level within our operation budget. The amount that we're proposing to spend out in years 3, 4, and 5 is within that 3% range. So we weren't overcommitting beyond what we're going to be required to do by the state. So that's kind of the logic how we arrived at those dollar amounts. The one thing I will tell you, I want to clarify one statement I just made. The dollar amount in the plans is higher, but you only have to fund 50% of what you propose. So the reason they have done that is that if you put forward a plan and there are things that change, you can do things cheaper, or a community is struggling for money, that your 5-year capital plans only need to be funded at the 50% level, and that dollar amount you see on the bottom line of the spreadsheet represents that 50% level. So this evening I'll be seeking your support, and I'll tell you the specific thing I'm looking for, but Mr. Rogers, do the council president.
Yeah, I just had a question on the capital. I don't know if you were almost done, or if you're going to kind of ask. I know sometimes, maintenance of effort, many times you don't go below 0. And at the end of the year, you have some funds that are left, and that goes into your capital account. Now, over the last several years, that's what's been happening. And right, so the capital account is, I think it's about $750 or $1 million or $1.2 million of paying.
It was over $1 million, but it's going down to about.
Now, when you say this, it's going to be like the 4%, I believe, that they're going to implement on the schools to pay back the bond, which is going to be voted on at the state level. Now, I believe my question is, that money that we transfer over into capital, because you won't bring it back to the general fund and put it in the capital, does that count towards our 2.5%? If it does, I think we're already at to 2.5% of your actual contribution. So my point is, if we're already doing that by not going below zero, we shouldn't really see a tax increase coming from paying to fund that to 2.5%, when in reality, sometimes we're actually doing that already. You know what I'm saying, Kelly?
Yeah, yeah.
You know where I'm going with this, right?
I do, you don't want him to submit a budget with an increase to raise his 3% workforce business.
Can I ask a question? Do you have money set aside in there for maintenance?
So a portion, so the answer to your question is going to be threefold in some ways. So RIDE had, I shouldn't say RIDE, the governor's office put in her budget article a definition, so section 11 of the law puts a definition of what is considered maintenance expenses. So it excludes things like custodian services, et cetera. And that's in the packet I provided you on the bottom of page 3. So we have some money in our budget that we already do, for example, if we're replacing controls or fittings on a heating system, those are considered maintenance repairs. So the guidance is still forthcoming from RIDE, so I won't be able to give you detailed efforts, but I will tell you, we already have some money that we spend on maintenance that we can reallocate. The actual dollar amount is about $130,000 for that 3%, and then it'll be up to the council and the committee to work together how best to fund that. And so, for example, right now the town is receiving 2% from, when you do your capital projects, 2% of the elementary district's budget is going towards capital, 2% of the regional school department's budget, and 2% of the town's budget. So one school committee member has proposed that those monies that are already being taxed from the taxpayers at a 2% level, seeing as though they're based on our budget, be earmarked for the school, which would prevent us having to do a tax increase. So there are multiple ways to go about that, but I will tell you, part of our budget already includes maintenance. But I also know the flip side of that is this community needs more than 2% to fund its roads and the other items. So, and I know the voters chose not to increase to 4%, which my personal view is you should have, but
Absolutely.
I don't get to vote on that. I think it's my personal view. But so I understand there's going to be a struggle, so we will be able to dedicate some of our funds to it. But we are not at the 3% threshold, so at some point we will definitely be having to raise our budget to accomplish that. Or because it's a 3% annual, not you do it once and it goes away, it's an annual expectation. Starting in 2 next year, it's actually 1.5 this year, but starting in 2 next year, 2.5 the following year, and 3 years out. And that'll be an annual expenditure. To the $1 million that we had set aside, we've spent about 2/3 of that on the heating project. The funding of a lot of the capital projects that carry through to the summer, through the summer of this year. And we do have, we'll be drawing down a good portion of what's left in some of the capital projects that we put forward this year. If you remember when we went before the planning board, then they advanced the budget to you that I think drew about 5,000 from the town, by memory, but I have not about 5,000 from the town, and the rest of that budget was being funded by the local school department.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point, because, and I'm just going to advocate again what I've been trying to do for years, at this point, because Payne School is not included in the region as regional, I believe our state matching fund is 33% on a capital project. So it's basically 1/3. So we're spending 100,000, we're coming up with 66, and the state is giving us 33 to match that. If the Payne School was moved into the region, which would include the middle school, high school, and the Payne School, that number would, I think, increase from 33 to almost 60% or a little over 60% matching funds. And we're talking about capital here for schools, so this is an important discussion that adds to that point. That goes from 33,000 on a $100,000 matching fund to 66, almost double. Well, it's 50,000. It'd be over 50%, so it'd be almost 57, 58,000 that you would get matching from the state back. So I think the tighter the state creates these laws, it's almost forcing the town to look at how to also offset that. And this is a point that should be taken, that by putting Payne School in the full region, this affects your capital reimbursement from the state tremendously.
So in direct response to that, I'm pretty good about where the numbers are. The actual reimbursement, the current project is 43, but it's going down to 35. So Payne School will be receiving 35% back from the state for capital projects. We did write to the State Department of Education and ask them to calculate if we were regionalized K-12. If we were regionalized K-12, that reimbursement rate would go up to 61%, plus whatever incentive. So if you're doing LED lighting, for example, you get an extra 4%. So there are some incentives for energy efficiencies and other items, but the rate of reimbursement for this 3% that we're going to have to spend annually, go in perpetuity, assuming the law doesn't change, you would have a rate of return of an extra 36% annually from the state of Rhode Island for those expenditures that you're not going to have to do by law. So that's just the delta between the 35 and the 61. By the way, the same thing, right now we're receiving the low 50s, and because we have the bonus for the middle school and high school grades, and now our regional bonus will go up to 61% as well.
So at the end of the day, the state is making more than 84% cap, and we hold on it. Now they're increasing what we're forced to spend on capital improvements to 2.5–3% on this end of the ledger. So it's almost, you're gonna be forced to push the issue of full regionalization to try to balance your budget. Hold on to discussion.
That's tonight's agenda, thank you. Kelly, you had a question?
The question is, in order to currently be eligible for housing, you have to be paying it, you have to pay your expenses from a capital fund. So these, they're saying you have to budget in operations so much for capital. So are you sure they're still going to be eligible for housing reimbursement?
Yes is the answer. What the statute says is that you have to budget a dollar amount equivalent to 3% of your operating spending. It's not saying it has to be just sitting in operating, they're dictating a dollar amount you must spend.
So, in other words, your budget is $4 million. So we're supposed to put $125,000 earmark in a capital project fund, which is not your operations, specifically for. So if your operations go up 3%, that's exclusive of $125,000 for capital.
So here's going to be my, this was a budget article that came out and became effective July 1st. RIDE hasn't provided that guidance, as you know from.
That's right.
As you know
provided
from.
municipal government even less guidance than they have the schools, but we're funding it.
Right, but in that statute there were definite changes to the reimbursement rate, so there's zero doubt in my mind that they are not expecting school departments to spend 100% and get zero back. They specifically changed the percentages as part of that law change. So they put some different incentives for things that the state would like to see. Consolidating facilities, energy efficiency. So what hasn't come out is the specific guidance on how they're going to treat that. And not to go too much into the weeds, but as a specific example, maintenance, for example, painting is considered maintenance. Even though it's considered maintenance, it's not considered a reimbursable expense. So there are things that RIDE, that we should do to maintain the facility. Some of those get reimbursed and some of those don't. If you had to knock this wall down, put new wall board up, and then paint it, then it's covered. But if you just said, hey, I don't like the color, or it's chipping and peeling, it's not. So those types of descriptions haven't yet come out with the new statute.
Well, my main concern is capital or operations. So is it going to be funded from a capital fund, which is separate from operations? So when you go for your increase or whatever, the amount of money that you need, as you know, our capital is part of our 4%, but it's not part of yours. So where does that fall into play, and how is this going to be funded? 3% of your operating expenses gets added to operations or gets added to capital? We need more specifics. And unfortunately, the guidance just isn't there.
And as you know, having done some of the work with in combination with the school, that RIDE puts out what they call UCOA files, meaning they tell us how we have to account for certain expenses. So the budget that we build in the school department and the line items that we include are the line items that the Department of Education says we need to. So we have to upload our budgets to their system. So again, the specificity of how we have to account for this hasn't yet been out. Specific to this evening, they had a short window to do what they call a stage 1 approval. It was through August and to September 17th. And just so you understand what the process is, we have to submit a letter of intent, signifying the types of projects we would do, we'll have a narrative that goes along with those, and our architect is producing a multi-page document. Stage one is basically just signifying to the state that we intend to move forward with the process. So after we do stage one, they'll give us some feedback, and we have between now and February 15th to do what they call stage two. That's where you sit with the actual architects and, you know, draw the plans to do the different things that you want. So this is stage one is basically a spreadsheet like that, a lot of supporting documents about the demographics of the community, and some budgetary estimates. To submit stage one, what is required is a signature of the chair of the school committee, a signature of the superintendent, and a signature of a municipal representative. So this evening, I'd be seeking a motion to either authorize the council president or the town clerk to basically sign a letter stipulating our intent, our stage one submission, and our intention to submit stage two. Before we go forward with the stage two submission, we'll come back to this committee, so this council, so that you'll have an idea of, you know, where we've gone with the projects, what the actual cost estimates now that we've got plans, because as you know, construction costs are doing this, because the economy is heated.
Are you looking for Payne School and region, or just Payne?
For this evening, only Payne School. Because we're a regional school district, we do not need the approval of the two town councils, but because Payne School is a department within the town of Forster, we do need the approval of the council or the support to move forward with phase one. And again, this was a sprint for us, I would say. The last 4 weeks, you know, getting ready for the opening of the school and generating quite a bit of data for the state for the stage one submission. So I would say it's been a sprint for the last 4 weeks, but that's only stage one, and it's a breather between now and February 15th. So for this evening, we just need someone to have the authority to sign a budget letter, or not a budget letter, a letter of intent.
And I'll make that motion in a second, but so the region, just to be clear, the region's also gonna be coming forward with a 3% up to phasing in the first.
So at the region, we're in a different place, fortunately.
Or unfortunately.
No, well, depends on how you want to look at it. About 5 years ago, at the region, we started increasing our budget by 0.5%. So 5 years ago, we increased it 0.5%, 4 years another half, then another half, and another half. So presently, 2% of the regional budget is currently dedicated to capital expenses. So we built that into our budget over a 4-year period, doing a 0.5% increase, so that the pain wouldn't be substantial on the taxpayers in any one given year. So we're already at the threshold, we're going to have to increase it going forward, but at least, you know, we've taken a bite of at least half the apple.
Well, at this time, I'll make a motion to instruct the council to approve, and instruct the council president to go into the contract or the approval of allowing Payne School to do the phase one that the state legislature is mandating to cover the bond for the school repairs.
Discussion.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is a term of whether something is capital a legal term? In other words, it's something that has a life of a certain number of years. So I know you were asking for about whether it's going to be a capital expense. I mean, isn't it by definition a capital expense if it's something that has a certain life over a certain dollar amount, such as $10,000? Or were you not saying that? I just thought that there was confusion, you know?
I understand what a capital expense is, and you can have a capital expense as you know in operations. My question is, are we gonna be funding this from our capital? For your capital, are we gonna build it into it as operations, which then, once it's built in, then it's the same, then it's already there. But if we have to allocate a portion of our capital expense that much to the school every single year, there's nothing left for the town. That's a big difference, and it's a big concern. And the current legislation states that you have to pay it. That's why, in fact, Payne School created its own capital project fund, because you had to spend the money from the capital project fund to be eligible for housing aid reimbursement. So my question was, is this going to be part of operations and therefore still eligible for housing aid, or is it going to be part of their capital and we're funding it from capital? Which our capital allocation is say $400,000 or $500,000 for the year. If you're spending $200,000 for the school, or 125 or 150 based on this plan, and it's not eligible for, you know, it's, how we fund it is a big concern.
Wasn't I saying, just to follow what I was saying though, is isn't it definitely going to be a capital expense? I mean, operations or educational programs.
Yes.
I mean, I can't see any other problem. I mean, to me, this is slight overreach from, this whole thing happening is overreach because they're doing it so that some schools don't neglect their buildings.
Yeah.
We're not doing
We
that.
just spent
They're forcing
65
all of
million
us to
fixing
do
it.
this. They're forcing everyone to do it.
Because it is prevalent though, it is prevalent that people spend $40 million using bonded money to build a school and then they don't put another dollar into it for 30 years. It is prevalent throughout the state of Rhode Island that we're known for that. So I understand the concept, but I wish they were more definite and the rules and guidelines were more defined so that we could have some sense of security when you vote for something like this. How are we gonna fund it? Is it gonna be from our capital? Is it most definitely, regardless of whether you put it in operations or earmark it in a capital project fund, which is not subject to FTM approval, by the way.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the school can carry.
They do.
They do, but they can't have a line item. What they do is at the end of the year, when there's any funds left over, they transfer it to capital. But are they allowed to carry, in other words, what I'm trying to say is help you with that, if they have a line item specific to capital in their budget, in their line item,
They can.
that wouldn't affect our capital.
If we fund it through operations, if we
Correct.
fund it through capital, it definitely.
No, I'm saying funding it through operations specific to a line item in their budget under capital.
But currently, if they pay for it out of their operating fund and not their capital fund, it's not eligible for housing aid either. That is why they created a separate fund for our capital.
Well, they can, once they had it in their line item for capital, they can transfer it. Well,
If they do it, they have to budget
Right.
it that way, yes.
Is that what you're gonna do?
So I think that would be a cleanest way, so it doesn't affect our capital, because we're struggling
Right.
with we're struggling with the 2% transfer. The answer would have been a 4% would have failed. Well, again, this just adds additional weight onto that plate, so we, like you said, we have to be careful, and I think the best part is to have them creating that line item under capital that matches the 2 or 2%, and at the end of the year, when they do transfer money that they didn't spend, they cautiously budgeted, and there was a little bit left over, that would also go towards the 2 or 2.5%.
So I'm responding two different ways. So one, the whole purpose of us doing this, so whenever we can write grants or get the state to pay for a portion of a project, that's, that is our first place to start. So I can promise you that whichever way we pay for the project, we need to pay for the project so we can get, 35 or maybe someday 61% back. We certainly will not be doing it in a way that we pay for 100%. The whole purpose of doing this is to be able to have some of the state funds come back to the local communities. So it's really going to be a struggle between, when I mean that, I struggle, a lot of conversations of if it ends up getting funded out of the school department so that it doesn't go against the town's needs for capital, that will result in a need for a budget increase. If you don't want to do a budget increase, it will decrease the amount available for the town. So that's the seesaw choice.
Well, the other option to that is if you don't, then we're just gonna have to do the increase on our end to be fiscally responsible and fund our budget, where that's my concern. Sometimes you may get a council that doesn't understand how all that works, and pretty soon, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, you're looking back and, oh, we probably shouldn't have cut that as a choice of cutting it out of our budget, so.
Well, that's the thing, their operating budget is paid from our operating
Correct.
budget. Their capital currently is paid from our capital budget. And our capital budget is what, $400,000 or $500,000 a year? If they take 200, you have to pay the roads, fix your school, town buildings, and you have to do it, buy equipment for DPW, and do everything else. Fire trucks, rescues, with the remaining $200,000 or $300,000, and that's not enough.
So it's gonna be,
And that's at 4%.
I know.
That's at one set, because we fund your capital at 2% of your operations plus 175,000, so that's.
Which we're additionally putting in extra.
Yes, so that's not even funding it in accordance with the charter, it's in excess.
That's optional, so.
That's optional.
Right, I know.
To Mr. Rogers' point, one of the ways to minimize the impact on the local vote is regionalization, because that would substantially increase the amount of funds we receive back from the state for capital projects. It would also have a fairly significant benefit to these communities, both Forster and Gloucester. So to give you an example, there used to be a regionalization bonus for regional school districts. That has gotten diminished. So what they did is they created categorical funds for busing. So right now, the towns of Forster and Gloucester, the increase went up from 300 to 500. So we were getting $300,000 reimbursement from the state. We're now getting $500,000 reimbursement for the state because they recognize transporting, when there's population density, transporting a kid costs this much. When the houses are spread apart, transporting a kid costs this much. So we're now receiving $500,000 back from the state of Rhode Island, but we're only getting a reimbursement on what we spend in grades 6 to 12. If we were regionalized, we'd also be getting money back from the state of Rhode Island on K to 5. And so I won't say it's exactly 500, but if you do the math and say it's 500,000 for 7 grades, you know it's going to be more than $50 for, for the bottom grades as well. But that's a decision for this community to make, but it is a way of ensuring that you can minimize the impact of running schools and running the town.
The problem is, it's a decision that two communities have.
I 100% agree.
Mr. Sabato.
Yeah, just a big picture tonight, I love sitting here. Tonight we added $60,000. We moratorium 6 times 13,000, which is $78,000 if we're gonna moratorium solar farms. And then we just added, in my estimation, close to $120,000 out of some pot. 60, 120 is 180 out.
No 60.
No 78 in. That's probably close to a $200,000 loss for that. Because you compartmentalize the things that come before you.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Sabato.
welcome. I'm not against this.
We do have a motion, it has been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes.
If you get that, what you want, and sign it. I will do that.
Second phase, we're not committed entirely until we do the second phase.
Correct. So this is basically the first, yes, that's 100%. First step.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan.
Thank you.
Moving on, the next item is the marijuana ordinance public hearing. Dr. Barnes? I will continue. For the public hearing, you have a copy here. If you do not have a copy, there is a copy of the ordinance here. We will read through that so that you can hear it. We will ask people to give their opinions, pro and opposition to. You will speak when recognized. I will ask that you come forward, state your name and your address so that we have that for our record. And then you will not be speaking to other people in the audience, you will speak to the council only. Thank you. Who would like to read the ordinance?
You'll be out of
I read.
You ever get one of those days when the light goes off and your eyesight's a little long?
I'll do it, I can read it,
Okay.
it's not a problem. I just know you like to do that. So, this is, the Forest Town Council will hold a public hearing. And, actually, that's not the ordinance, is it? Okay, so the definitions, to be added alphabetically in section 38-2R. Compassion Center, as defined in Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6 through 3, is a not-for-profit entity registered under Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6 to 12 that acquires, possesses, cultivates, manufactures, delivers, transfers, transports, supplies, or dispenses marijuana and/or related supplies and educational materials to patent card holders and/or their registered caregiver, cardholder, or authorized purchaser. A licensed cultivator means a person as identified in the Rhode Island General Law 43-3-6, who has been licensed by the Department of Business Regulations to cultivate marijuana pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6 through 16. Non-residential cooperative cultivation means 2 or more cardholders who cooperatively cultivate marijuana in non-residential locations subject to the requirements set forth in Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6-14. Residential cooperative cultivation means 2 or more cardholders who cooperatively cultivate marijuana in residential locations subject to the requirements set forth in Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6 through 14. Residential caregiver cultivation is a primary caregiver as defined in Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6 through 3, who elects to grow marijuana at their residence in accordance with the regulations as set forth in 21-28.6-4. Residential personal cultivation means marijuana cultivation by a single registered cardholder as defined in Rhode Island General Law 21-28.6-3 within his or her residential dwelling for medical use only, in accordance with the regulations set forth in 21-28.6-4. Uses to be added to section 38-191, table of uses, after accessory uses in the following manner. Medical marijuana related uses, compassion center, would not be allowed in agricultural, residential, it's NC.
Neighborhood commercial.
Thank you, neighborhood commercial, would be MI, which is.
Manufacturing industrial.
Thank you, manufacturing industrial, R-SC, which is residential,
Senior housing, I think,
I think that's what that is too, and M, which is municipal. It would be allowed in general business mixed use.
So that would be only one position compassion.
Right, like compassion center, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about that. Licensed cultivator would be a special use permit in the agricultural residential. It would not be allowed in the neighborhood, tell me again? Thank you, neighborhood commercial. It would be a special use permit in the general business mixed use. It would not be allowed in the manufacturing industry, the residential, which we think is the senior housing, and the municipal, thank you. The non-residential cooperative cultivation would not be allowed in any of the zones. The residential cooperative cultivation would not be allowed in any of the zones. The residential caregiver cultivation and the residential personal cultivation would be allowed in all of the zones. So all interested persons are invited to attend, which you are here. And that's where our discussion, so I will open it up to the public. Yes. Would you please step forward, state your name, address, and I'm assuming.
May I sit?
You may sit.
I am again, same person, Anita Rodman, 27 Tucker Hollow Road. I just want to speak not to the licensed cultivator or compassion center aspect. I went to the Title 21, tried to make a little bit of sense of it. I just want to speak to the question of whether amendments to the zoning ordinance are sufficient in the implementation of this total program. I'm fully understanding of the need that people may have. I'm not speaking to that. I'm speaking to the 5% who abuse the privilege of having a patient card where they can cultivate in their home and use it. We had, not very long ago, a ring that was broken on Tucker Hollow Road in Situate and in Connecticut. It was led by the Connecticut Police Department, the Foster Police was involved, where people were abusing the patient card system. False cards, expired cards, 4 different residences using the same cards. My only question is, I don't have the answer, as to how this will be administered in terms of, presumably the code or this title says that a local police department may be involved in knowing who's given a permit. I can't imagine that the building inspector can be enforcing all this. I mean, part-time person, I don't know how that would happen, but if I have a family with young people and my neighbors are appropriately doing this for their medical care, I understand that. But if they are inappropriate and selling or giving inappropriately, that's a problem. So I don't know how this will be locally administered, and it does affect homes. I'm not expecting an answer, I'm just saying I don't see that just only having code changes.
I don't think this is the time for us
No.
to, after the public hearing, then you,
I'm just raising the question.
thank you.
Patty Morrow, 157 Central Pike. First of all, this ordinance, which it does coincide with the state law, does not protect the town whatsoever. None of this does. What needs to be done is, I have pulled up other ordinances from various cities and towns. I put out a blast email to all the assessors and gave them all to the planner. And there are quite a few cities and towns that they're kind of iffy on their ordinance, but there's a few that are very, very strict. This needs, the state law, one of the state laws that I read kind of states that some of these things cannot be publicized, who has these, who's growing, you can't publicize it. So, we make them, they can't have a special use permit because then you need a public hearing. And that's violating their privacy. So what really needs to be done is somehow or other have to have them permit this in a way and only have certain people know who they are, because it has to be, it have to be nominated by the chief and maybe the building inspector, and that's it, and it would have to, somehow or other we have to work it out that way. But this ordinance just doesn't protect the town whatsoever. Anybody can do anything with this, almost, without anybody knowing what's going on. And you also have to protect your volunteer fire department. If you have a fire in a house and you don't know someone's growing, that's a danger to the fireman, walking in that house, inhaling, not knowing that it's there. And it's dangerous for them to put out these fires. So there's a lot to think about. So my opinion is, I think this needs a lot more work. That's my opinion on this.
Thank you. We're going to wait until the public is done, and then we'll come back to the council. Mr. Morrow.
Robert Morrow, Central White. I'm not against any of this, but I'm against this ordinance, the way it reads. There is no permitting procedure at all with this. It simply states under the state laws. All the guidelines in here, this is just a list of what the state laws are. There's no permitting process.
This isn't the ordinance, it's just,
There's no permitting process.
this isn't a written ordinance.
No, this is not an ordinance at all, really.
That's
This is
just the
supposed to be the
ordinance, it
ordinance.
doesn't even say that.
Right, but this is really not an ordinance. All it does is state what the state laws are and what people are permitted to do by state law. There's no ordinance. What's here to protect the town? There should be a permitting process, as we do with any other type of commercial business, especially since this does take up commercial businesses, are mentioned in here, which the state does allow commercial growing of marijuana. So, where's our permitting process? This ordinance needs to go back and be redone. We need to review other ordinances in other cities and towns and base our ordinances on something that will protect this town, allow a permitting process, as these people have both said. There's nothing here.
Thank you. Mr. Restivo, please state your name and address. Thank you.
John Restivo, 27 Mill Road. So I do think, I do think that there's a distinction that should be made between the commercial growing and selling and personal cultivation and use. There are restrictions on the town's ability to regulate personal use for medicinal patients. And so, we're putting up a permitting process for that. Other municipalities are running into trouble with that. And whereas on the commercial side, which is really the side that I think I'm more concerned with as far as the actual cultivation and compassion centers are concerned, I do think that there are some room for improvement here. I actually think that the ordinance merits being loosened up a bit. There's currently a compassion center is allowed by right in the GBM zone. You do not need a special use permit. A compassion center is a facility that's defined under law that can cultivate as well as sell marijuana to licensed card holders. A cultivation center cannot sell to licensed card holders, but that requires a special use permit in the GBM zone. So I think it's a little illogical to require an additional approval process for something that's a much less intensive use. Cultivation, you have to get a special use permit. Cultivation and retail sales, you don't need a special use permit. I think that's inconsistent and doesn't make much sense. There's also only 3 licensed compassion centers in the state. There's no indication that that's going to change anytime soon. It might change, but it's not realistically something that's going to happen in Foster anytime soon. Whereas, conversely, there's quite a few cultivators who are looking for places to set up cultivation facilities right now. To Patty's point, a lot of towns have heavily regulated this, and they are looking for places to set up these cultivation facilities. I've dealt with some representing them. When they go through the special use permit process, it draws a lot of attention to something that's really, the way it's regulated in the state can be a very innocuous use. It's safer than a bank. The way they have direct links to the state police, 24-hour video surveillance, you don't have a bunch of lights, you don't have a huge parking lot, there's not a lot of traffic in and out. It's really a very innocuous use that I think is very compatible with our community. So I think if I could recommend just one change to this ordinance would be to allow licensed cultivation without requiring a special use permit in more zones, maybe the commercial zones, the GBM, neighborhood commercial, and manufacturing, industrial. I also think it would be worthwhile for the town to consider sort of preemptively anticipating that this ordinance might apply to recreational use as well, because it seems like that's a very possible route that the state can legalize that, and whether you're growing it for use by a card holder or you're growing it for use by for someone recreationally, the cultivation centers don't sell it out of their doors, so there's really no difference in use. That's it for me.
Someone else had a hand up. This is right.
Leonardo, 20 Burgess Road. I mean, this was just, those are massive comments. I just had one teeny-weeny little housekeeping one. And that was the last designation is residential personal cultivation. And it just said, within his or her residential dwelling for medical use only. while above the residential caregiver cultivation, it says nothing about medical use only. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? Then I will close the public hearing, and now I will bring it to the council, Mr. Rogers.
Couple concerns out there. Patty brought it up where it's a HIPAA violation, but if you notice on the 5 and 6, residential caregiver cultivation with Compassion God and residential personal cultivation, I think is already legal in the state of Rhode Island once you have a medical card to grow or you're a provider for medical people. So you can't even really stop them. It's already something illegal, so they can do that. So that covers your situation where it's already legal, that they don't have to come in front. It's something that's already there. They have a right to do it. That's for the personal. I kind of agree with what John was mentioning, Restivo, about some of the zones here. I don't know why they were special use permit. It does draw a lot of attention at a special use permit, and I think, number one, first of all, at this point, like, there's only three licenses in the state. Big part of this is just trying to get in front of it, so we don't run into like we did with the solar. We've already started something, and it's already there. So I do agree to some extent on changing and on permitting it in a GDM and manufacturing and neighborhood commercial as a permitted use without a special use permit for cultivation. Licensed cultivation. I think we have an opportunity to get some revenue also on taxing this and licensing fees for such things as cultivation and stuff.
I'm not sure how that works with licensing fees, because to get a license from us, would have to be a public hearing. That was where my concern was. So if you get a license.
Well, I'm talking cultivation, I'm not talking personal caregivers, it's already legal. I'm talking about licensed cultivator.
Right. I'm
You
hearing
would-
licensed
You
cultivator.
would read that out at the end of the year, and there'd be a licensing fee with it, it passes because it's a licensed cultivator, that the police chief would have to sign off, the fire chief would have to sign off. It's not a special use permit, public hearings and all that, but it is a licensing fee like we do for
But what
private
we do,
business.
right, but what we do our
It's
licensing.
an address, that's it.
Well, that was one of my questions, is like, okay, how do we keep that?
Well, that's a different type of private. When you have a special use permit, you're literally under microscope, and that's completely a different arena than it would be with approving licenses for liquor licenses, licensed cultivators, private investigators, FFL license holders. I think that can be added to that, and licensing fees on it.
Ms. Washington?
I really did not think this was the final ordinance that we would decide, that we were discussing it tonight, not voting on it.
I would recommend that my personal recommendation would be not to vote on it at this time, to ask the planning board to look at it again, or the planners to look at it again. I do know that it's planning. They write the ordinance.
Well, it already came from, I think the point of this meeting is to take in what the public said, what the council said, send it back to planning, and look at the comments that were just being recorded.
That's what I
I mean,
would
to
recommend.
simply just send it back without that type of information, it already came from them, it came to us.
Right.
To get the input from the council and the public.
I agree.
Very specific as to what you want, because essentially, the planning board just added some uses to the table. There's no real ordinance meat in it, and if that's what you want, I think be clear that you want an actual more than just a table change.
Right.
Yeah.
I would like to see it go back. I know that, I've spoken to the planner at length about this. Have her looking at it. I know that there are several towns and cities that already have ordinances in place. When the planning board started this, it was back in 2017.
All those, we've had them for a year and a half.
Right, it's been
We decided
2017.
that at this point, because the recreational is still in limbo, and we didn't want to really get on that until we see what the state did. But we felt comfortable at least doing a use table at this point, and we weren't going to go into a full-fledged ordinance right away. We wanted to have the use table just structured, you know, for the recreational, medical.
Will the next iteration of this have the actual narrative as opposed to just a use table?
That would be what we would recommend. That would be what we're voting. I can't make a motion, but I would suggest that they look at it again, come up with the wording, looking at that table, in particular, the special use permit for the licensed cultivator, reviewing that. Do you have something else in mind, Mr. Rogers?
No, and that's what I specifically was speaking to, is the use table.
The use table.
I
I think we need a little bit more meat to it than what we have here. And I know that back in 2017, looking back at the minutes, there wasn't a lot of direction at that time. So, do we,
Yes, I reiterate everything you just said.
is there anyone else that would like to add to that?
How to make it into a promote to answer those questions?
Yes.
No, actually, every other community must have to deal with that public licensing thing. I mean, particularly when you have to advertise, but everybody knows. So there has to be.
And that was one of my questions, is like, how do we go about that? And I understand you're saying licensing, but we do publicly announce what the licenses are. And
don't have a problem with
okay, no license, there's no license, but that was what Mr. Rogers was bringing up. So, at this time, we have another, Mr. Restivo, you have one?
No, just that the licensing, just to correct what I think is a misunderstanding, it's not a municipal license, it's a statewide license. So we would get like building permit fees, but we wouldn't get license fees.
Okay.
And we wouldn't get that annual notice of licensing.
Okay.
So what's the benefit of the town?
That was my question too.
Specific question, yeah, and the commercial cultivators that can only sell to fashion centers, is there any B&B taxing the town to get there?
No, the town will get the property, so they get the tangible taxes, they get the building code permit fees, they get the, real property taxes, but they couldn't tax the.
So how,
And increase police force and enforcement and observation. They need all that.
I have a question for Mr. Castillo. So how is Colorado, bankrolling, not bankrolling,
They get the
$40 million bank?
They get recreational.
The state gets a lot.
Just because it's legal?
Yeah, the state of Rhode Island gets a lot, because they might have retail sales taxes as well.
So that's recreational too versus medical. And there's a lot of problems out in Colorado because of the increase in police, the increase in EMTs and.
I get that, but
Here's your answer.
they're paying millions of dollars.
Here's your answer. Micro license class A is $20,000 they pay the state for that.
Yeah.
Class B, they pay the state $35,000 for the privilege of a class B. Class C, they pay them $50,000. And class D, they pay them $80,000.
Well, there's one class with 3 compassion centers, it's $250,000 a year.
Yeah, I'm not thinking that this is going to, a marijuana institution in Foster is going to pay our bills. It's not going to be the answer. When what the price, they're not going to. So, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion that this go back to the planner to increase the areas of use and to make this more of an ordinance that it stands alone.
Perhaps reviewing other ordinances from other towns. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Yes.
I'm sorry, maybe someone here knows more to answer. Is there a role, maybe there isn't a role, having to do with the individual registered card holder who is permitted the use of medical marijuana? Is there a role there for the town in terms of abuse of that? I'm referring back to the actual incident that had happened, so.
Not the zoning.
Police,
No, I'm saying this goes beyond zoning, that is my point.
it's police enforcement.
So because of HIPAA, and because the state Department of Health issues a registration card, it would be up to the Foster Police Department to say, do you have your card, and blah, blah, blah. do you have-"
If they stumble upon it, yes, and they have.
If I as a neighbor said, if I as a neighbor,
All right, I need it to be quieter.
let me give the example. If I as a neighbor think that there's undue traffic next door, and that this is going beyond an individual's medical use, I would call the police department? And they would, yeah, I'm just, because this is going to become unclear for individuals. Okay, thank you.
And there's only so much they can do. unless-
Right.
I
I
understand.
think the chief has to explain Chief, that did you wanna- more to her.
That's correct. If you think it's suspicious activity, you understand something. They have to put in the surveillance, so that probably cause to knock on someone's door. Even if, just because, you believe that there's something wrong, it's a quagmire. This is a headache, there's no doubt, we live in America. And everyone has a right to privacy and a right to be secure in their own home, even the police department. Even if we think there's something going on, probable cause, otherwise they're gonna be involved in a major lawsuit. This is a quagmire, and this is the reason it's been in the discussions as far as who's in the know, what type of licenses are gonna be granted. This is not, and you also have to have a building inspector, an electrical inspector, a fire marshal, because there's always people trying to fly under the radar. This is a major, this is not something that can be decided in one night. You've got to have discussion on this. And I agree with that. I want you to call the police department. I want to make you understand, even with that phone call, we'd have to conduct surveillance on
Fair
said
enough.
property, but
I just
it
want
doesn't mean
to.
not to call. I just want to explain to you, like, we just can't walk into somebody's house and say, let me see a car. You have more than 24 plants in your house, 12 immature, 12 mature. You know what I mean? It's a very involved process.
So, from a citizen's point of view,
Yeah.
what the town is facing is things having to do with compassion centers and licensed cultivators, and not the registered individual medical marijuana.
Yes.
That's
Right.
all I want to know. So when we talk about marijuana ordinance, we want to be very clear about that, and it wasn't clear when I got the notice or when I read the material.
Thank you.
Chief, have you been or had prior chief been involved in this ordinance, working on it?
Fire chief, I don't know.
Chief Zeal did attend some of the planning board
Yes.
meetings when this was discussed.
Well, to me, it seems like you should be involved in this and have some input
Oh, absolutely.
in this when this goes forward.
I did already ask. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, motion's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Carey, as the planning chair, would you welcome people coming to, looking at the agenda and coming in and participating, if you will, or discussing it?
Always welcome people to come in.
So if you have anybody here
I'd
as
rather people come into the meetings and be involved in the process than to not be
afterwards.
happy with what comes out. If we get the input at that point, it's a lot better than when it comes to the council. We had that input a year ago, and this has been a long time.
Yes,
This was
I have the
presented, we
minutes from
sent this to you,
2017.
yeah, for quite a while back.
Mhm.
So it was, a lot has changed in marijuana, medical marijuana problem since when we discussed it, because it's been a long time. So
But I would encourage anybody who wants to give any input to please attend planning board meetings. They're on Wednesday night, second and fourth,
First and third.
first and third. I look at the agenda. Thank you. Moving on, we have the letter from the planning board. Would somebody like to read that, or would you like to read it?
I'll read it.
How are your eyes?
They're getting better. Print's getting small. To the Honorable Town Council President and Town Council. In discussion about a possible blight ordinance, the planning board became aware of the state property maintenance code. We believe that there should be greater time and effort spent on the enforcement of the current state property maintenance code as regulated in the Rhode Island State Building Code under Rhode Island General Law 23-27.3-100. We want the town to maintain and attract new business. One way to accomplish this is by maintaining an attractive and appealing appearance. It is clear that some properties on Route 6 lack compliance and conformity with the state property maintenance code. We are not requesting that the Route 6 vicinity be treated differently than other areas of the town, but it is obvious that the particular properties need redress. Specifically, we are concerned about areas bordering Route 6 that are neglected and have been unkept, exterior surroundings or structures. Does the town council have any questions, thoughts, or concerns? In addition to the planning board advises the town council to hire a full-time zoning official. Joe Carey, Forest Planning Board, Attachment 3, Chapter 3.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Well, I'm gonna look at about full-time zoning enforcement, which is, I don't know where we're gonna get the money from.
Well, I think at this point, that would have to be addressed at the next budget workshop, in
right.
the incoming budget, but I do want to add that a lot of people don't realize how much work our zoning official actually is affecting change on Route 6. And he is in the same position as our police chief. He just can't walk on a piece of property and put a padlock on the door and say, your grass is too high, we're shutting it down. I don't want to go into detail, but there's no less than at least a half a dozen places on Route 6 that he is addressing, whether it's businesses being operated that they shouldn't be, things being talked. You may see a bright orange sticker on them to notify the town. That's one way that you know he's been there. Whether it's, we've addressed businesses here that we want to bring to the table to try and work with them. So he is being diligent and he is concentrating on Route 6. So
And I don't think that's what this letter is saying, that he's not.
No, what I'm trying to say is he's doing things that people don't see. And I want to put to the fact that he is addressing properties that are blighted, that they've actually started to clean up. It is a slow process.
I agree, it looks better.
Yeah, you have, the first thing you get violated, first you try and talk to them, but sometimes if you get violated, you have a right to appeal within 21 days, and then you get a hearing. So it's not simply just walking in and shutting it down. He's working quite well, and he is concentrating on Route 6, and I have multiple conversations with him on the work he's doing. So I just want to add that into the discussion. That
Well, it does say, does the council have any questions, thoughts, or concerns? So,
I do. What is it that the planning board is looking at, anything specifically that they'd like help on, or they'd like input on in this, like, process?
Well, basically, this came forward, one of the new members of the board had concerns about, commercial businesses on Route 6 and trying to attract new businesses, and felt that, there was a way to clean up the road that maybe we could enforce our zoning. And so he suggested that we form a blight ordinance. Through the process, the planner and I believe the solicitor found a state, and I think the building inspector actually said there's a state statute and there's a statewide ordinance already in effect that the town does not need a blight ordinance because it's regulated by the state. So the state law is there, it's just a matter of the building official enforcing the ordinance that's already on the books in the state. So the town doesn't need to form an ordinance. So basically, it's just a matter of enforcement. So that's where the full-time building official came into the conversation. And my suggestion wasn't so much full-time, but I mean, we are already budgeted for 26 hours a week in our current budget, so that would probably be helpful because our current building official is usually in the office a couple days a week and works 10 to 12 hours a week. And we did hire somebody to come in as needed recently, but, you know, that's kind of a tough situation. If you don't have somebody that's out there all the time, just, you know, keeping an eye on things. And it's not a lot of properties. Some of the properties actually are properties that are abandoned or just, there's nothing going on them, they're just falling down. You know, so they just felt that, you know, the appearance might help. It wasn't all the members of the board, but it was a majority. So we suggested that we send a letter to the council just to inform them of the state statute and, you know, bring it to the attention of the building officials.
So because this is the state statute and this is the state road, does it come under
Well,
there? Or does it come
It
under?
affects the whole town. I mean, it's,
No, I know it affects
it's
us,
state
but-
law. I mean, for the whole, every property, commercial, residential, it doesn't make a difference. The state
So are you
wide
asking if the
ordinance.
state comes in
There are
and
certain,
enforces it, or
there are
do we-
certain things, and I think the solicitor could speak to it, that we can, you know, put guidelines on. I mean, if you wanted to start nitpicking and talk about how high somebody's grass could be, if you could put that in an ordinance if you wanted specifically. Because the town can put some things in, but the state statute kind of covers most of the concerns that we have. So we didn't feel there was a need to write a blight ordinance.
So my thing is, Joe, if there are certain things that are not being followed or done, or for appearance's sake or otherwise, then the building inspector has a right to go in on these places. Do these places need to be pointed out to him? Do we need to say to him specifically, this place, this place, this place? How do we, I'm looking for guidance for you, whatever way you want us to
Well,
do.
I suggested during the planning board, because there was some discussion from some members of specific properties, and I felt that they shouldn't be discussing specific properties because the people that own those properties aren't present to defend themselves. So I think it's up to the building official, if, you know, they see a violation, obviously, to enforce it, but if you don't have a building official that's out there and that has the hours to do it, that, you know, that doesn't get done. And a lot of properties are in compliance, just certain things, you know.
So we can just suggest to him that you go out Route 6 and it takes a look and he finds
Right, you
what
know.
is being
And the
violated.
planner, you know, had planned on going out with him and just looking around, you know, just to see anything obvious that was, you know, out of the ordinary.
Mrs. Moreau, the building inspector does that daily. When he's in, he goes on that road. He's found quite a bit, not only on Route 6, but on side roads and
Obviously,
he's,
being notified that they're in
when
violation.
he has to,
That's what I'm
when he
talking
has to.
about.
Yes, he puts a violation out when he has to.
The 26 hours are being, the total 26 hours are being utilized between the building official and the zoning enforcement officer. So those 26 hours are being used, if
And, I mean, the enforcement officer obviously has only been working for us for about, what, 3 months?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and we.
And I think that that's been an
a lot
improvement.
done too, 3 months.
I think that is.
I think so.
Yeah.
Can I just say this? First of all, it's 24, so because I don't want anybody.
Well, I was just using that, yeah.
But secondly, communities all through the state of Rhode Island are having a difficult time hiring a full-time building official. This is not, it's not significant to Foster alone, it's statewide. There is a shortage of building officials. Many communities have building officials who basically are working 10, 15, 20 hours a week and have other people doing exactly what we do because there's not enough people to go around. The state has required a specific certificate that almost nobody has, and unless you were grandfathered in, which is why if you look, most of, no offense, not to be ageist, but most of our building officials in the state of Rhode Island are older because they're doing it in retirement. They're leaving the
They
position.
can only
to do
work
it.
so many
And
hours.
they're doing it part-time. You have many of them who are working in multiple communities. So, for example, Exeter, West Greenwich, and he's helping
Sharon.
Richmond because they have the same problem. So this is a statewide problem. I think Foster would have a very difficult time hiring a full-time building official because they're cost prohibitive. So I think that you are right now doing the best you can. You might want to maybe allocate more hours to zoning or look at two positions who could work more, but I don't honestly think you could even hire here a full-time building official.
You don't
Certified
need
by the
licensing
state.
for zoning official.
You don't,
You do for building official.
Right, but what would a zoning official who can't do the building side do for 35 or 40 hours a week?
Well, because we have our building official who has a license,
That's right.
directs our zoning
So
officer.
it's working for us in this capacity. It might not be what they
I'm
want,
working on
but,
business.
right.
Just to clarify, I am the chair of the planning board. This was not my priority, this was not I'm speaking as the chair, my name's on the letter. The words aren't all mine, I mean, I don't, I see I understand where, the problems are. And I think, we do have the 26 hours and I'd like to see that utilized. I do understand that for full-time, I think the word full-time got in there, but I think to utilize what we already are funding is what, my opinion was on it. I didn't want to see, increasing hours or increasing the budget.
I would also like to add, as a business owner on Route 6, it's a very difficult situation how much you want to push on the businesses, what you want their building to look like, what your opinion of how high their grass should be, and things like that were mentioned, like where you put your dumpsters and lettering on your dumpsters was mentioned, and that kind of brought a lot of business owners out. And my point was, we have a responsibility to not only enforce our zoning enforcement, we have a responsibility to work with our business owners in town to foster. They're having a difficult time as it is out there. That's why some of the things you see are in the condition they're in. They pay a lot in tangible taxes, they pay a lot in property taxes on top of things. So and I try to, and Joe will back me up on this, it's twofold. And I've mentioned it before, and he's agreed with me that we need to go out and talk to our business owners still, and maybe take a approach, hey, have you thought of doing this? Maybe there's some kind of state aid to help you do this or do that, instead of just really. There are some that definitely need zoning attention, and those are getting attention, but there's others that, at a certain point, they're allowed to do certain things within the law on property that they own in commercial zoning, that if you try and enforce things down on them, it becomes a legal issue, and then we're in Superior Court spending a lot of money, lawyers, on fighting something that, they finally put their feet in the ground, so it is a two-way street.
I don't think it's a burden on the business owners to perhaps place their dumpster in a less obvious place or build up some curb appeal. I think that there is room for that. And I would hate for the planning board not to, or the town for that matter, not to push forward with some kind of an ordinance that requires businesses to make their outside facilities look more attractive. It's done in other communities, it can be done in ours. Thank you.
My point is, you don't want to tell a property owner what color to paint their building.
I didn't say that.
Well, I mean, that's the point, what I'm trying to make, is you have to be careful how far you go.
Yes, it's a fine line. It's a fine line, and honestly, I don't think it's the length of the.
And I think this point was the state ordinance allows us to hit the basics
Right.
that will fall within the blight ordinance that they were trying to put in. This pretty much covers all the bases, and that's what we're going to be working off of.
Does that satisfy? I know it wasn't your letter, but do you want more from us?
No, I just felt, that obviously, any of the, if we do ever have, businesses moving in that want to build a new facility, and with the GDM, you can use the whole property, so obviously, with the new facilities that are being built, when they're built, the planning board has jurisdiction over allowing for, fenced in and anything they want as far as, on the new one. So what's there is there, and, to work with the business owners and, you know, try to form incentives maybe for them to, you know, do things to their property, you know, to enhance it would be nice, but to, you know, make them, you know, do things that they're not in violation of any code, you know, I don't think is necessary, but I think, you know, there are ways to, you know, increase, you know, how they keep their property, just make sure, yeah, right, you can do that without, you know, being.
And honestly, you notice it, driving down Route 6, you notice that businesses that have made improvements. I can think of a couple, yes, that have made improvements and you notice it right away. And there are others that weren't. So, any further discussion from council? Hearing none, moving on to the adoption of the hazardous mitigation plan. We have submitted it to the state and it is now moving on. So we have here a resolution for the town of Forster authorizing the adoption of the 2018 Forster Hazard Mitigation Plan update. I will read it. Is there anyone else who would like to read it? No? Okay. Whereas the town of Forster recognizes exposure to natural hazards that increase the risk to life, property, environment within our community, and whereas proactive mitigation of known hazards before a disaster event can reduce or eliminate long-term risk to life and property, and whereas the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, Public Law 106-390, established new requirements for pre- and post-disaster hazard mitigation programs, and whereas the 2018 plan identifies mitigation goals and actions to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property in Forster from impacts of future hazards and disasters, and whereas adoption by the council demonstrates their commitment to hazard mitigation and achieving goals outlined in the 2018 Forster Hazard Mitigation Plan update. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Forster adopts in its entirety the 2018 Forster Hazard Mitigation Plan update, the plan, as the jurisdiction's natural hazard mitigation plan, and resolves to execute the actions identified in the plan that pertain to this jurisdiction. Number 2, will use the adopted and approved portions of the plan to guide pre- and post-disaster mitigation of the hazards identified. Number 3, will coordinate the strategies identified in the plan with other planning programs and mechanisms under its jurisdictional authority. Number 4, will continue its support of the Hazard Mitigation Committee as described within the plan. Number 5, will help to promote and support the mitigation successes of all participants in this plan. Number 6, will incorporate mitigation planning as an integral component of government and partner operations. And number 7, will provide an update of the plan every 5 years. Passed and adopted on September 13, 2018. What's the pleasure?
I make a motion to, that we adopt this resolution accepting the hazard mitigation plan of 2018.
Sorry.
Discussion? Yes.
I just have a question. When it was, I guess it was a public hearing or something we had before,
Yes.
I mentioned that the 2 bridges we have out can present, people having no method of egress. Do you know if that was included in the revised?
There was mention of bridges in it. I don't know that the 2 particular bridges were signaled out, but it was included in bridges.
Okay.
Any other questions? You don't remember?
I don't remember the specific
Bridges, but I know that we did make note that there is a need for the bridges to be maintained.
Right, but there's 2 that's out. It's not a method of, it's not a matter of maintaining them, it's putting them back. And that would seem to be a big goal and something that the state would, require, I would think, if you're going to have a hazard
Well,
mitigation.
I can speak to one on Hemlock Bridge. That's the one that's out near Maggie Fenton. Right now, the planner is looking into grants, and she hasn't thus far come up with anything, but she said she's checking another avenue, so I'm still hopeful that she'll come up with something that will help us with that one in particular.
With what Cheryl said, now that this has been approved and accepted by the state, we are open for pre-mitigation grants, pre-disaster mitigation grants. It starts in October and goes through January. That's the grant application process. So I could talk to the planner about that because that would be, I think that would be covered. I also talked to Bob Moore about the trees. We're gonna see if we can get some kind of funding for that through
I know
that grant.
that's a concern.
Mhm.
Yes, but we have so many.
He just thinks it's gonna be too much.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do you have one for me to sign? Or do you want me to sign this? Moving on, request for use of Fairground South Gloucester Fire Department in the annual road race. I will be recusing myself.
I would at this point take a motion to accept and approve the request for the use of the Fairtown Fairgrounds for the annual road race to be held on Saturday, October 13th of 2018.
Second.
Discussion.
Any discussion?
You are the vice president.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those remaining against?
It's late.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on to additions and abatements.
I make a motion that we accept the addition abatements, 2018 motor vehicle additions, total additions $104.86. 2016 motor vehicle abatements, total abatements $19.40. 2017 motor vehicle abatements, total abatements $28.51. 2018 motor vehicle abatements, total abatements $134.13. 2018 real estate abatements, total abatements $187.29. 2019 tangible abatements, total abatements $696.89. 2018 first appeals, total abatement of $1,555.39.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Future agenda items. Central Pike Covered Bridge, Wright's Auto, moratorium on solar farm, Foster regionalization, anything else? Hearing none, executive session. We have.
She likes auto.
Wright's Auto.
Wright's auto.
I did. I said that before.
Kathleen?
I move to go into an executive closed session, Rhode Island General Law 42-42-12, for the Region State of Rhode Island General Law 46, A1, 5A1 personnel.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.